Hello and welcome. I'm Mary Broussard, the historian here at Hebron Baptist Church, and you are watching Hebron Baptist Church Roots. Here in this specific series of videos, I will be going through and telling of the history of Hebron Baptist Church as a whole. This series is one of two root series, one being Hebron Baptist Church Roots Pastors, and this one being Hebron Baptist Church Roots, the church. But before we get started, please feel free to like and share this video, as well as subscribe to the HBC Denim YouTube channel and our other multiple social media platforms. All right, now let's get started. Today I will be talking about the very early history of Baptists in Louisiana, but we have a thing that Baptists didn't just start in Louisiana. It started in Mississippi first. So we have to go way back to the beginning and follow it down the Mississippi River to learn about this history. If you go back in your history that you've studied in school, in 1776, when we won our independence from England, there was a lot of unrest in the colonies, and people were, if you were on England's side, they were saying you should have been on the America's side, and if you were on America's side, they were saying you shouldn't have anything to do with England. And so there was always a bickering right after that war, and people just got really uptight. And there was some families in South Carolina on the DB River, and they just got really fed up with all the fussing, and they decided to move their families completely. Mama, daddy, kids, grandkids, aunts, uncles, the whole shebang, and go to the what was going to be opening as the Mississippi Territory. Spain was still having trouble with France at this time, and so England wasn't paying attention to what Spain was doing, and so Spain just decided to up and steal or seized what was to become the Mississippi Territory, and it went from New Orleans all the way to Natchez. And so while England and France were fighting back and forth, Spain was taking land here in America, and finally the King of England just gave that part to Spain so that he could quit fighting with them and get on with the French. He did that in 1782, and the unrest continued, and people started. This group decided they were going to go ahead and move. And they packed up everything they could pack and put on a horse. And the women and children rode the horses, but the men walked so that they could hunt while they were walking. And they went from South Carolina to Tennessee, to the Holston River. Many of these people had joined Baptist churches back in South Carolina. They stopped in Tennessee to plant corn so that they could grow a crop and take that crop with them as they went down the river. They also spent that time making flat boats, tying the logs together and getting it ready to float. But the water was so low in the river where they were, they had to wait till they had taken in their crop. They had to wait a while longer till the water had gotten deeper from the rains that would come. They went down the Tennessee River, the Ohio River, and the Mississippi River. Going down the Tennessee River, they had to be really careful because there were sharp turns in the river that pulled you closer to the bank, and those are the places the Indians would attack the boats. And sure enough, as they rounded one of the three boats was captured by the Indians, the last boat. And the last boat had dropped back, and the first two boats didn't know why, and turned out they had smallpox on that boat. And so the Indians that attacked that particular boat and took a hostage, a woman hostage, they killed everybody else. They also got the smallpox and took it back to their camp, so that they ended up losing because of the smallpox. The lady on the first boat, her husband they had an oar thing that you pushed, and he needed to be shooting and not doing the oar, so she took over the oar, and then directly she put her 12-year-old son on the oar and held up a stool in front of his face so that the Indians, when they shot their guns, the bullets wouldn't hit him. Well, he was grazed on the side of the head, but afterwards she laughed. She said their bullets may have not been too good because the stool didn't have many marks on it. They went on down to the Mississippi River and down to the mouth of the Coles Creek just above Natchez. And they went in there and went in about 10 or so miles, and that's where they made their little settlement. The Curtis family, the Hamlin family, the Alvo family, and several other families were there. Well, the Spanish officials said if you're any other religion beside Catholic, you cannot have services. And these people were very faithful with their services. So they set up guards so that they'd know if the Spanish officials were coming for them. And they said, if we catch you, you'll go to the silver mines in Mexico for the rest of your life. Well, they really didn't want to do that, so they were trying to be really careful. And sure enough, the Spanish officials were coming. So the three main men, Richard Curtis Jr., Hamlin, and D'Alvo, went into a thicket and hid. And so everybody else just wandered off like they were going home, had been visiting, whatever. And when the officials left, they got back together and decided, now, these men have to go back to South Carolina, so who's going to take the supplies that they're going to need to them? And all the men said, I'm not doing it. And you know, when God wants something done, and we say, I'm not doing it, He's going to provide. The woman named Chloe Halt said, if y'all will give me a horse, then I'll take it to them. And they dressed Chloe up in men's clothes, and she took everything they needed to them and got back to her house safely, and nobody caught her. There's always room. In 1780, the first church in Mississippi was founded, and it was Salem, and it was above Natchez, but about 10 or so miles. The first church in Louisiana was Half Moon Bluff in Washington Parish. And then the next thing that was founded was in 1806, Ebenezer Church in Mississippi, and we're getting closer to the state line now. And the Half Moon Church was across the state line. But Ebenezer Baptist Church in Mississippi was founded in 1806, and that church is a still functioning church after 200 years. In 1812, Hepzibah Baptist Church was founded, and Hepzibah Baptist Church is really important to Hebron Baptist Church because it was from Hepzibah Baptist Church in the Felicianas that the people came. They asked to be dismissed from Hepzibah Baptist Church, and there was 12 of them, and they came down here on the Coyale to form a church. Well, they sort of missed the Coyale, but they did form a church. And the 7 charter members were Larkin Story, H.L. Acard, Catherine Acard, William McMurray, Thomas Bond, Rebecca Bond, and David Phelps. Now, when the church was established, and after they had gotten the rules of decorum and the first church covenant, and the Articles of Faith, then they were ready to start accepting members and be a full-fledged church. Reverend Jesse Young and Thomas Bond were the presbyter for the founding of the church, and Thomas Bond was called as the first pastor. And then David Phelps, who was a charter member, was a deacon in Hepzibah Baptist Church, so they asked him to be the first deacon at Hebron Baptist Church. In 1837, Hebron was founded in April. It joined the Mississippi Association in October. The associations met once a year, 2 to 3 days, and you went by horse, wagon, or walked, buggy. And you stayed with people in the community. And Hebron joined that association. And then in 1842, our church, as well as a group of other churches that belonged to Mississippi Association, but that were in Louisiana, decided to form an association, and they formed Eastern Louisiana Baptist Association. Had a different name back then, that's the association that our church still works with to this day. It's been a long time for it, but our church is older than it, so we're 184 years of service. Thank you for watching Hebron Baptist Church Roots, and please continue to watch the upcoming videos. We have a lot yet to cover. Feel free to come to our library in the HBC office or drop by or by appointment, mostly on Tuesdays. Sunday school is at 8:40 a.m. and church starts at 10 a.m. every Sunday morning. You can also join us on Wednesday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Once more, thank you for watching Hebron Baptist Church Roots, and I'll see you in the next video.